I'd like to go over the rhetoric of visual and oral argument with you. There are a lot of components to consider. A visual and oral argument actually overlap in a lot of different ways, even though there are some distinctive differences. It's also important to consider some examples as we apply these components. So I'd also like to first cover the oral argument components. And here we have oral argument. What comes to mind when you think of it? Some examples in the real world might be when you go and see a movie and play and you notice that there is dialogue between a couple of the characters. They go back and forth, and that is a form of oral argument. Lectures are a form of oral argument, just like what I'm doing here with this video lecture. Music lyrics from a song that you hear are a type of oral argument. They're being sung to you. Public speeches from people like politicians that you might see on TV is a form of oral argument. And you might even consider commentary on TV advertisements, anybody who's speaking over, talking about a product that they're trying to sell. Some characteristics of oral argumentation include the fact that it's immediate. You hear it through in your ears, so it resonates with you right away, and you're able to absorb the information. Usually, it's carried in the form of being spoken, chanted, or sung. And when it occurs face to face rather than on the screen, the argument is more enhanced. So if you're live, at a live concert, that's going to be a significantly better experience than just watching a concert through your TV screen. There's a connection there that is just irreplaceable. The audience and the speaker have a connection, and it's usually related to things like emotional appeal. Okay. Other characteristics of oral argumentation are that it employs the physical as well as verbal strategies. So normally this might be something you consider with visual argumentation, but it also falls under the category of oral. So specifically physical gestures, when you make body language gestures with your hands or your arms or your legs. Vocal inflection, so thinking about the rise and the fall of the way you emphasize words and the way you set up your volume when you talk. Facial expressions, whether you're looking sad or angry or happy. Eye contact, if somebody who's talking does not make eye contact with you, that can communicate something important in their argument. Physical setting, where are we? Are we on a farm? Are we in a TV studio? Are we in a city? Those kinds of places might indicate something different to consider, or something that might reinforce the argument. What is the person wearing? So what's their style of dress? And anything that has to do with the physical appearance might fall under oral argumentation. So lastly, for oral argumentation, usually there's just one chance to hear the speaker, and that's why you might find there is repetition that is employed in the argument. You can consider the speech by Martin Luther King Jr., who has a speech called I Have a Dream, and he repeats that over and over again, that I have a dream. And that's the most important refrain that's carrying his message across. In visual argument, what examples come to mind when you think of it? Some examples might be drawings and paintings. So you're thinking about art. Could be cartoons, could be graphs or charts. You can even think about, graphs and charts might be in a math book. It's just a way to sort of understand an argument through data, through numbers. Advertisements are also visual, and visual demonstrations, like you think of a cooking show. Let's see, characteristics of visual arguments. They're also immediate, but which one's faster? Because, we said oral argumentation is immediate too. And so when you think about it, what you see in a nanosecond, you can, digest so much information in that eyeful. So visual argument is actually more immediate than oral argument is, which it takes a while to hear something and process that information. So the second bullet point refers to that it often evokes an emotional response. If you see something, an image can communicate more directly than words. And you'll notice this when you do the discussion board this week. I show you 6 different images, and they're all really emotionally evocative the first time you even glance at it. You might not understand exactly what's going on the first time you look at it, but it does elicit an emotional response from people who view it. Sometimes a visual argument might employ icons or symbols. So you might think about the iconic Nike symbol, the check mark, just do it. Or you might think about the Apple symbol for the Apple company. It's got a symbol of the apple with a bite taken out of it. There's the iconic M for McDonald's. And so there's all these recognizable symbols and icons in society now that's usually based on some kind of marketing strategy. It's also important to think about what's selected and what's not selected. That's a type of critical thinking that I love about visual and oral argumentation, is to think about what's been put in the image and what's been taken out, because an image is usually confined by its own borders. And so we'll talk about that here in just a minute when it comes to journalism and how journalism has manipulated what we show in the media and what the audience, the nation, gets to view when it comes to really important news. So one more slide before I show you some images. Rhetorical techniques of film and visual text. You're going to want to pay attention this week when we do the PSA assignment that's due Sunday. Music, how does it reinforce the message? Shot type, how would you describe the way the scene is shot? Is there a close-up? Is it a panoramic kind of viewing where you can see everything? Is there an angle for a certain type of perception? And clip editing, long, short, colors, lighting, what's been left out. So usually when somebody's arranging together the different clips, there's a lot of cutting and a lot of re-editing different materials for you to see in sequence. And that takes us to sequence. Is it decidedly in chronological format, or are there flashbacks also included? What kind of genre is it? If it is let's say a film or movie, is it a thriller, romantic comedy, or documentary? Structure, you want to think about the way the content is organized and the point of view it's being told in. And then audience knowledge, what are we expected to know? What are some of the situations in which the audience would be familiar with this context? Here's an image of the Birmingham campaign from 1963. And what you're seeing here, there weren't very many photos being released of the riots and the demonstrations that were put on by the protesters. But it was a huge time. This was in Alabama, and there was a lot of tension among the communities, and a lot of police brutality, and even the firemen were called out, and they were hosing down the demonstrators. And so here you don't really see the people being hosed very well, but you can see that the people here are holding the hose, the fire hose, right? And there are a lot of different angles of this that have been included in journalism. Here's another one. Here you don't see who the perpetrator is. You just see these young people of color being targeted. They're being victimized by this type of brutal force from the water. And so, again, these images are taken from different angles. And here's a third one. And now you see who the perpetrators are, who's actually doing the hosing. And so you think about what's being selected versus not selected. I think this is a really good example of something in recent history where there was a lot of racial tension and a lot of dissent and a lot of people in trying to, use their power to send a different kind of message across about who should stay in, superior. And in this kind of context, you can see them using this physical force, this power. And it wasn't shared in the Birmingham news. An intern actually uncovered thousands and thousands of photos that were just kind of stored away because it wasn't really leaking to the media and to the general national public that this was happening. Like you would see headlines about, that the police dogs were they were sent out to cause harm to the people. And then you would also hear about the fire hosing, but you never really saw pictures until later on these were uncovered. So all of the angles share a different sentiment. There's a different emotional response every time you look at one of these photos, and just thinking about what's selected each time, right? The first time you don't really see the victims in a close up. You're seeing it more from the angle of the people holding the fire hose. And then here you actually see just the victims, but you don't see who is the one causing this painful force on them with the water. And then here you do see both groups of people in the same photo, which is really, really powerful. And just shocking and really horrific, right? So that's the kind of journalism that I think, if you're a photographer in journalism, there's some kind of important role that you have to capture what's really going on, not even maybe just through one photo, because there's some sort of limitation to that, but to tell a whole story of an important time and place, a political warfare, so to speak. There are many pictures now that you can Google and find about the Birmingham campaign and the riots and the demonstrations that had happened in 1963. So let's rhetorically analyze some advertisements. I'll just show a couple. We'll move on to a couple different kinds that, just deal with masculinity and femininity. And this one is an old ad. You'll see here that it says, I'll read it to you. It says, "You get a lot to like, filter, flavor, flip top box." And based on this ad down here, it's a Marlboro ad, the new filter cigarette from Philip Morris. And it says, "Thank a new recipe for the man's size flavor. It comes full through the filter with an easy draw. Thank the flip top box for the neatest cigarette package you ever put in your pocket or purse. Popular filter price." And so what you'll notice about this ad is, number one, there's a man on it, and he's just kind of looking away. You can see his facial expression. He's got his eyes averted. And some people can't really tell if he's, holding maybe a fishing pole or a rifle behind him, but it's some kind of manly weapon, something that evokes masculinity, the way he's, wearing the hat and the sweater and has these masculine features. And he's holding the cigarette, and he's even got this tattoo on his hand. I think it's an eagle too. So maybe that there's a significant message there with the eagle, and maybe something with nationalism or patriotism. But you'll also notice the words. There's a lot of words in this ad, and I notice there's a lot of alliteration. Alliteration is when you have words that start with the same letter, and it sounds very rhythmic, right? Filter, flavor, flip top box. It's very catchy. It sounds very musical out loud, the alliteration of it. So there's something that's supposed to be inviting us in to think about the Marlboro as something we should buy. And even if people knew who Philip Morris was, then that would also be a type of popular testimony that would entice people to want to be like him. And notice the language that I read to you at the bottom. There's language that alludes to the masculinity of smoking and why you should do it, too, just like he is. It says, "Think a new recipe for the man size flavor." Like, man size really emphasizes the masculinity. And then it comes full through the filter with an easy draw. So you can see the language, just easy draw, makes it sound very accessible and fun and chill. Think the flip top box for the neatest cigarette package you ever put in your pocket or purse. This seems to be the only area where it alludes to even women might want to buy this. They're targeting women just a little bit there by mentioning pocket or purse. But it's mostly still the company is trying to target men. And popular filter price, that's the logical appeal there, is that it's affordable. It's not just easy and for both men and women, but it's also affordable, right? So that's a little bit about this ad. Here's and that's, I think, all I have time for right now, because it's going to cut me off at 15 minutes. But I just wanted to expose you to one ad. Thanks for your time.